Hello and welcome to the first Elite Prospects 2024 draft ranking. We have 10 of us here today, including our latest addition to the team, data engineer and all-around good person, Chase McCallum. Everyone say hi, Chase. Can we get a hi, Chase, from everyone here?
Hi, Chase.
Hi, Chase.
That's right. But yeah, this is the energy that we have right here. Everyone is just so excited to be here. It's phenomenal. So this is a very interesting draft class because it's early and it's the draft of big guys, toolsy guys. And the very first player is neither big nor especially toolsy or maybe super toolsy. So we'll start with Macklin Celebrini. David, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, he's been good. He's been really, really good. And the main thing with Celebrini is that he's super dynamic. And there are other players like him in the draft who are very good off the rush, but he's the main one. Like everything he does is in motion. He has the handling skills, the skating skills, and he can process the play and even deceive defenders at a high speed too. So he can pretty much do everything off the rush, and he's developing his puck protection skills, and the defensive effort and the defensive skills are coming along too. So he's a really complete player, and he has that high level of skill too. So he's a pretty easy number one, I feel, because other players haven't separated themselves as much too. So I would have him number one.
So that means we go right to number two, where this actually becomes a little bit of a debate for us. We have Cole Eiserman, we have Ivan Demidov, we have Cayden Lindstrom, we have a Sam Dickinson at second overall person. So why don't we start with Cole Eiserman, Joey?
Yeah. So with Eiserman, the most intriguing quality is probably the shot. I'm not sure if he's nearly as creative or as much of a playmaker as we've seen kind of from the top end guys of the NTDP in the last couple of years. But he's really good at moving off the puck to find soft spots. His teammates will do a good amount of work on the forecheck. He'll be the third guy high, and he can release from anywhere. He's super versatile, shoots off both feet, pulls between his feet to leverage the flexion on his stick. And there's still some creativity off the rush, but a lot of it is aimed at generating a high quality scoring opportunity for him. There are some kind of bad habits that you wouldn't hope to see in a second overall pick. There are times where there are some pretty big defensive lapses, times where he won't stop on the puck and kind of flies the zone a little bit too early. But certainly the shot is something special and merits a ton of consideration for this second overall spot.
That BU game was wild. 5 points. He even flashed some playmaking. He's a little he is one dimensional in the sense that if he gets the idea that he wants to shoot, he'll just try to force everything through. He'll fly up the middle, try to shoot through a bunch of pressure. But yeah, he dominated BU. It was quite sad actually. It was 2 one-time goals, one off the rush where he built a lot of proactive speed and turned the defender. I think it was Willander too. So yeah, he's awesome.
Can we all agree?
Why don't you introduce us to Demidov?
Last year, he looked like there was serious. Is it going to be Michkov or Demidov as the top Russian for these, this span of drafts? And he came into this year with a lot of momentum. He had a really good preseason. Was playing against KHL teams, and he was looking really good. There was a lot of chemistry with him and Michkov playing together. And then the year started, and he didn't get any ice time in the KHL. He was getting 6 minutes if he was lucky. And then he finally got moved down into VHL, MHL, and now he's hurt for 2 months, I believe. So there's been kind of a pause in his development there. I wasn't huge on his early regular KHL season performances. He was kind of he's still in his hero hockey era. It didn't really translate as well to the KHL, and you could see him trying to dangle through 4 guys at once and losing the puck on the first guy. But he's still very smart. That's his main sell. He's probably the smartest player in this class when he's fully focused on making things happen rather than trying to just do everything himself. And you kind of see that when he was back in the MHL. He was still going crazy, overhandling, making a lot of plays that you don't really want to see. But when you focus on the plays that are the ones that kind of matter and the ones that are driving offense, he's still a very smart player, still very skilled. The skating is questionable if it's going to translate as well. But He's very entertaining. There's just kind of that big question mark about still not seeing his game in a professional level yet, and now being injured, he's going to have to kind of feel his way back into the lineup and keep getting limited minutes or play on a bad VHL team. So
the main interesting thing with Demidov is you said it's really the skating, because contrary, I think that's the main separator between him and Celebrini, because Demidov is really an inside edge skater. So he has those 10-2 moves that are super impressive and are very useful and larger ice with more open space. And in some respects, he's a great skater, but he has some limitations too, because he doesn't use his outside edge as much. So he doesn't have those cutback moves that Celebrini has. He won't be able to separate from defenders as easily because of this in tight spaces at the NHL level. So he has some great strengths in terms of skating, but also some limitations.
So what about Eiserman versus Demidov? How do we feel about that?
I like the Demidov a bit more, just in terms of creativity, in terms of all-around game. It's true that he's playing hero hockey, and it was the same thing with Michkov at some point. Like, we have a bit of a trend with some Russian forwards, but in terms of being able to see the play and make the best play and the playmaking skills, Eiserman is more of a shooter. Like, he's only a shooter in some games. So yes, he has that automatic release, but I feel like Demidov brings more to the game overall with his motor, with his energy, with the playmaking skill. So I would have him ahead, but we didn't, like Dylan said, we didn't get to see him develop yet this year. So there is some uncertainty with him, but yeah, I think it's pretty clearly Demidov for me.
If we flip their positions and they were both healthy, that I think we'd be seeing Eiserman doing some hero hockey as well in the pro leagues, because that's kind of his game as well. So now we're basically looking at the mind, the tools, and the skating. And I personally hedged Demidov by a hair as well right now at this point, just on his draft -1, but really, really close. I think they're both clearly top 5 guys here. But Eiserman, to me, he's Phil Kessel without the elite speed, right? Like, he's got just that all-world release that he'll fire into shin pads, 5 times if he needs to before he gets one through, and then it finds a hole. Like, if he can get it through, it's oftentimes finding the back of the net. So he's just got to work on seeing that peripheral vision a little bit, and or up in his hands and getting himself even better quality chances, I guess.
So I think that solidifies our top 3 then: Celebrini, Demidov, Eiserman. And now we get into the fun territory. So I'll introduce Cayden Lindstrom, who 6'4", power center, deceptive, high pace, loves to attack the inside. We've seen some real playmaking growth from him this season. His trajectory is pretty much straight up at this point. He's improved his defensive game. He wants to be a physically imposing player. I mean, he's a complete prospect, and he's off to a torrid start scoring-wise.
This kid's amazing. I love him. I love him so much. I think that he has the second highest upside in the draft, like maybe even the first, like, because he's so raw but so good already that you can just envision what those next steps are going to be. Personally, I think we could be having this argument that he should be 2 on this draft board too. So yeah, putting him at 4, I think is a pretty slam dunk. And Mitch, everything you've been talking about, his character, the type of person that he is, his work ethic, his understanding of his limitations and looking to improve them, that we're seeing that from his draft -1 to his draft season here already. Huge gains. I think we're going to see some massive gains over the next 2-3 years. The 23, 24-year-old version of him could just be a nightmare for opponents.
And don't get the notion that he's dominating just because of his size. It's almost like a secondary thing. Like, if his deception and manipulation and handling doesn't work, he'll bury the guy. But this is a player that has a lot of nuance, a ton of runway, like a ridiculous amount of runway to go before he is the player that he ends up being.
Okay, I think that's settled. Is there a better player, or is it Cayden Lindstrom?
I think we're all in agreement here.
Okay, David, you have the floor now to tell us who you want next on the board.
I would have Sam Dickinson. I'm not sure about him yet. Like, he has some limitations. I'll preface everything I say with this, because there are many players like him in the draft. I think he's the best defenseman in that mold. So he has the typical things that I like in a defenseman. He has the tools, the size, the mobility, and he's very aggressive in the way he plays. And that aggressivity has improved too in this season. So he's making more plays offensively. He's more involved in the play, and he has those shutdown tools. So we're always talking in terms of potential here, because In terms of actual performance and results, it's pretty up and down. Like the reads are not always there. We have some doubts about the overall processing, but since he has such a great tool foundation and he's in a good development environment too, I think I won't say I think he could be potentially a top 4, even higher defenseman in the NHL if he's proved to be coachable and he can learn to erase some of his mistakes and become even more involved offensively, develop his playmaking. Like he has already those moves at the line. He can fake defenders and sometimes make passes to teammates, but it's very inconsistent. So I like the tools. I like the overall desire to make plays too.
Anyone else have a name they want to throw in here?
I'll put out Helenius just so we can have a debate and get another name in there. I really like this kid too. I know Lassie's got him. He's our Finn, and he's got him in the 7 to 10 range. So this is just a bit rich, but I've got him. I think he's right there around that 4, 5, 6 spot. Great hands, really great mind, sees the ice really well. Obviously playing, some real minutes there in the top 9 in the Liga, putting up points. And apparently he didn't have a great release until yesterday. And now he's also got a wicked shot like that. That dragon snipe posting in. That was pretty. That was the best shot we've probably seen of him. So that's another step in the right direction for this kid. I love the hands. I love the mind, and I think the skating's good enough at this point too that it's projectable at the NHL level. Looks like a clear top 10 guy, and probably going to be pushing into this spot too.
Chase, do you have any insight on any of either of these two guys, or another name you want to introduce?
Yeah, I've been trying to get the model going and whatnot. I think all of these guys basically just make a general sense in the range. It's tough to have like hyper-specific opinions this early based on any of the data, but I think all of the names make sense in this general tier. Anton Levshunov, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that.
Artyom Levshunov?
Yeah, that's
okay.
I don't know if others watched them as closely, but they're very similar in certain respect. It's just that they can be basically one after the other here, or with other players. It's just I feel like Dickinson has been slightly more consistent in his game. Like the upside is more evident in more of his games. But I one of the best game I've had for a defenseman, one of my best viewings has been of Levshunov. Like the first game he played in the NCAA was very solid. He didn't attempt too many plays either, because one of his main issues is that he is constantly trying to make things happen on every puck. And sometimes it works, sometimes it really doesn't work. And he doesn't even look like a first rounder in the draft because the decision making is so poor at times. But the tools are there still. He can play a shutdown game. He's very physical too, and he loves to participate in the offense. So yes, everything is just in terms of figuring out the difference in hockey sense between them and who's more projectable, easier to project. I like Dickinson slightly more, but this could flip like at any time during the season. Like Levshunov really has a lot of potential too.
Levshunov, he's super interesting. Like you said, I saw that first game too. And even though he wasn't trying to create on every play, he still led rushes. He still was in there first on the forecheck on some opportunities too, right? Like stepping up into the zone. I love how guys try to hit him and then just go flying off of him too. He covers so much ground. I think another one. I got him right behind Helenius on this board too. That another one of these toolsy, maybe not the brightest bulb, but we can work with that. I think whatever system he ends up getting into, if they can just be like, now you're going to be like focusing more on defense, things could get very, very interesting for him.
So are we cool with Dickinson at 5?
I honestly agree with everything David said. I might be a little bit lower on Dickinson because I don't know if I am as sold on the hockey sense of the decision making at this point, but it's early in the season. I don't have a problem with him in this range. I mean, he's the top OHL defenseman on my board anyways, top player as well.
Dickinson frustrates me more than Levshunov does with some of his decisions. Neither one of them are high IQ guys. I'll just put that out there as why I have Dickinson below.
I like Dickinson. He's super aggressive on the blue line, jumps up to try to kill plays. He's so big and he has so much range with his stick that you can just see him making stops at the NHL level, especially, with a partner that could support him.
Okay. Dickinson at 5, Levshunov at 6, Helenius at 7. Any objections?
Catton instead of Helenius.
Yeah, I feel it's a bit early for Helenius, but I really like him too.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the WHL forwards then. We have Berkly, Catton, and Ryder, Ritchie, 2 quite similar players, very pacey, very give and go centric types. Berkly Catton is a very aggressive rush player, but you also see him cut back, change pace, and so on. He's a pretty dynamic, electrifying talent, and he has the skills to absorb contact, get low, fight off checks, drive the net, and so on. And Ryder Ritchie flashes, a little bit maybe more of an individual higher end skill game where he can dangle around guys, change fakes into pass receptions, and so on. So both of them could be top 6 point producing forwards who bring value in all 3 zones.
Yeah, I think Catton is he's a little more refined than Ritchie, and then also it's been mentioned in our Slack, we were talking about it, like Prince Albert isn't the best environment either for a player to just go out and play their style. Catton, he's there's so much delays and separation of upper body and lower body to open up pass lanes that you just can't see normally, and he's got a wicked shot. I didn't really expect that when I watched him a bunch this week. Dragging the puck to his inside foot and rifling it top shelf. He's definitely in this range, at the top here. I'm still. It's hard for me to separate Ritchie and him though right now.
My point of view on this is that I feel like Catton is really going to need the puck to thrive at the NHL level. For me, he's really a rusher. So someone who really excels at breaking defenders in the neutral zone and getting offensive zone entries. He's manipulative. He uses teammates. He can stick and low at different rhythm than his feet. He has all those rushing skills, but I feel like Ritchie could fill more roles in the top 6, be a better supporter to teammates, play more of a give and go game. Although Catton can do that too, but create more plays off the wall. He's more versatile slightly. In terms of result and performance, I think Catton has been better. But in terms of versatility, just the general array of skills, I like Ritchie slightly more. And at this point, we can go with track record. Catton has been the top name for longer than Ritchie. We can keep him ahead a bit, or we can go with a player we feel has had a higher development curve, or he's peaking a bit more. So there are a bunch of questions.
I prefer Catton, but I prefer Helenius over Ritchie too. So I
Okay, so Helenius versus Catton.
It's just in terms of tools. I think it's very interesting debate because I watch a bunch of Helenius. I love the hockey sense. It's high and he's always in the right spot at the right time. He tries hard defensively. He's been better than Celebrini at this, defending in zone, defending neutral zone. He's a great support to teammates. It's super easy to play with him. It's just a skill level. Is he going to be a top 6 center for sure? What do you think, Cam?
I think that he is going to be a top 6 player. Yes, maybe not a center. We'll see if he slides over. He has played the wing as well. But I think that mind, right? The mind is above, and Catton is just a little more electrifying. And so we're splitting hairs here, but I think I actually have a baby back to back. I prefer Helenius by a whisper right now, but I love what Catton can do. He can break a game open. So if we want to look at pure upside, then I'm fine with Catton at that spot.
And Ritchie at 9, or do we want to start talking about Anton Silayev?
I think we can delay that for a few spots still. Respect the room, because it's going to be a hard debate.
Some foreshadowing.
Yeah. I think just putting Ritchie there is safe and it's more aligned with the group view.
Okay, so now we have to close out our top 10. We have one more spot. Any contenders for this spot?
There are many, I think.
How many?
And there's Jiricek. I have Connelly pretty high. I know he doesn't make unanimity. There's Parekh and the Swedish guy that I can't really pronounce the name.
Norwegian guy, isn't he?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Brandsegg-Nygård is a very fun player. He's a great forechecker. He wins pucks. I think Lassie tracked him already last year. His retrievals bars were like this, blue all the way. He plays that against the pros now too. Really good at reading those situations. He disturbs defenders all the time, and his team gets the possession back. I like his patience with the puck too. He tries to make good plays. He's aware with the puck. He's not super skilled with the puck. He has a good shot, a good one-time shot. So he should score more than he has so far. He's big. He has a great motor. He can play up and down the lineup. He can contribute in a top line. He can contribute in a fourth line. So he plays the same way in either role. So he's a very translatable player in that sense. So that's about what I have to say about him. I like him in this, 10 to 15 range. I don't really know a lot of the other players yet, so I can't really put him exactly where I want him, but somewhere there, I think he's that type of player.
So we'll throw this over to Cam Robinson then. Cam, do you have anyone who you think is better than him?
So I've got Jiricek and Silayev ahead of him on my board.
Nice.
Yeah. So but like that's 8, 9, or that's 9, 10, 11 for my list too. So those guys are all interesting guys. It's completely different players that we're talking about for the most part too. So it's kind of a part and parcel. Marek maybe wants to jump in and talk about Jiricek a little bit too.
Yeah, of course. Like, I feel like number 10 should be fair for Jiricek at this moment. Like Jimmy said, this will be also probably my only contribution for the top 32 players. But let me introduce you Jiricek. He's a two-way defenseman who is active in all three zones. I like his aggressive approach to the game when he battles for the loose puck, and is also engaged physical. Jiricek is a great skater with solid edges. We saw that at the Linka Gretzky Cup. He likes to use the edge work to escape pressure. He also has like solid vision, which he uses for feeding line mates with precise passes, especially during the power play. He's also really good at finding shooting and passing lanes through the traffic. But where I see the room for improvement, there's definitely decision making. He can like enter the zone at really like good speed with solid puck handling skills, but his next steps are usually limited with his decisions, and that usually is leading to turnovers and problems for his teammates. So this is the area where he needs to improve. But he's a really interesting prospect.
What do you think of his performance against professionals this season? Because I feel like he struggled a bit at the start. He's been better a bit, but I feel like his game really came alive when he played against juniors for a time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like when I see him in Extraliga against men, I always like tell myself, this guy definitely needs to go to play juniors in the under 20 category, and he dominates there. He's like really visible on the ice. So I definitely agree with you.
I really think it's the right spot for Jiricek. I had him as high as second overall for a time on my board during the summer. I had super high hopes for him. Like, he hasn't been as good as I expected to start the year, but when I watch him, I feel like he's a draft -1 player. Like, he's so young and he lacks refinement right now, but the finished product in a few years could be really good as his brother or even better. Like, he is. I think the skating is slightly better, but it's still in terms of like pivoting and catching up to players after rush. He was getting beat at the professional level, but it was not a problem against juniors. So he just needs to gain strength and figure out where are his marks on the ice. I think it's going to be great, but it's going to take some time.
I look at it the same way, right? Because when he's at the junior level and he is so young, he's very dominant. He's making better decisions with the puck. He's making better reads coming at it. And then playing against the pros, his immaturity really it can be exploited by some of those guys too. You know, he's still scanning in the defensive zone. He's still got his head up and he's looking for the right play. He's just getting beat, or he's not making the right decision with it because it's time and space is taken away so quickly. But a really, really interesting player. And I often give guys that look like maybe they're not going to be high IQ guys, but then their birth date's in July or August or whatever, and we can usually, look for that to build up in the next year or two.
Okay, Jiricek at number 10. There we go. And I think then we should probably put down Brandsegg-Nygård at number 11, and then it's time to have the great Anton Silayev debate.
Hey, boy.
So Silayev last year was a 6'7" defenseman in the MHL who moved pretty well. And, that's a player who you write down, interesting name. He doesn't really do anything else. He just moves well. There wasn't a lot of puck skills. There wasn't all that much going on. And then he breaks into the KHL this year, gets like 20 points in his first 2 games or whatever. And the hype train begins. And looking at it as a whole, he hasn't really changed that much since last year. You still look at the puck skills as a weakness. He's awkward and uncoordinated. It's not unexpected for a 6'7", 17-year-old. I expect that to get better. I expect him to be, get more confident when he's handling, get a better feel of the puck, know where to put his stick a little bit better. Right now, it's very limiting with his overall puck moving skills, and that along with his sense, which is one of the lowest grades that I have for anyone in the region. He doesn't spot passes very well. I have a handful of clips of him just shoveling passes at the first forechecker ahead of him, and he doesn't get exposed on all of those mistakes. But it's like, man, if that forechecker just was giving a little bit more attention to the pass, it's going right on his stick, and that's a scoring chance right there. So you just see him rushing passes, rushing all of his moves in general. So the team that he plays for, Torpedo, they play that very fast, heavy passing, trying to do tons of give and goes, everything. So it encourages him to move the puck faster, and you kind of see him pass 2 feet in front of him to his teammate who's already getting pressured from behind. So the pass will just come right back to him. Just not really efficiently moving the puck enough. But then you look at the skating, and you kind of get distracted. He's a 6'7", humongous player. You can't miss him on the ice every single shift, and he's got to be up there for the best skaters in the class, especially given the size. He recovers so fast. One stride is all he needs, and he's cutting off the space on the outside wall. When he's on his game defensively, he is really tough to get past, but that has also been very inconsistent this year. You see him put his stick out in front of him, and the puck carrier will just dangle right through him. He doesn't really suffocate plays consistently unless he can kind of get them against the wall. Then he can just use the pure frame that he has to kind of close down that space. He's not as physical as you'd like for his size either. You see that on his retrievals where he'll go in really soft. A guy will come in next to him, steal the puck away, and that happens far too often for a player of his size. So there's a lot that is going against him, but there's also no ignoring that there's tons of upside if he can start figuring things out soon. My main concern with him now is that we're 20 games into the season and there hasn't been a lot of improvements. Like some games he'll look a little better, but as a whole, like there's not been a lot of him adapting to the league. He's still making the same plays that make him look like a 1 hockey sense grade every once in a while, and it's a very frustrating player who has the upside, but I'm not a firm believer that like he should be in like a top 10 or anything at this point.
The amazing thing is that I agree with everything you said. Like it's not a debate of like what the player is, because I think we fully agree on this. It's just like what's the value of a player like this? I see him as a unicorn, a potential. Like I see all the mistakes. It's just sometimes there are flashes of higher hockey sense. Sometimes there are flashes of higher handling skills, but it's overall a weakness right now. And there hasn't been a lot of improvement, but he has that same formula that I like he has the size, the mobility, and can cover ground like no one else in the world almost. Like, or when you project him to his year at 23, at 24, like he might be like the best cover ground player in all of hockey, like because he's so mobile at his size. And so I think there's a high floor because of his tools. And I feel like hockey sense for a defenseman of his type is not as important as for other players, because when you're a defenseman who's super toolsy, and you can often just react to the game, even at the NHL level, just follow your teammates and follow the system and still make a competitive impact, even on a bottom pairing. So you have kind of that safety net, I feel, and there's the upside of like if everything comes together, like he could be maybe not that first bearing guy, like that main defenseman, but kind of insulator to that defenseman or play on a top pairing still. So there's the floor and the super high upside, and there's a lot of value in that. So I would rank him top 10, but I think with everything that he has showed, and especially because there hasn't been a lot of improvement since the start of the season, if there had been improvement, I would have been like even more annoying with him. I would have pushed him like top 5 and all this, but he's been the same player. So I think it's about the right spot for him, just in terms of value. And we can just continue to review him and watch him and see if he evolves or he stays the same.
Whoever drafts him, their fans are going to absolutely torch him on a regular basis. He's going to be like, it'll be like Tyler Myers or Ristolainen or whatever, these big guys that they could do so much, but they just make those boneheaded decisions. But I mean, how do you not take a chance on someone that size with that mobility and bet that you can't break them in to be halfway decent defensively and to make a breakout pass? And you've got yourself a second pair defenseman that can chew up 22 minutes a night and maybe only blow it once or twice a game. So yeah, I think the upside demands the respect of this spot in this class.
Yeah, because he's making those high-end plays sometimes. Like once every 2 games, you see him take the puck down the wall, move beyond the net, and make a pass to the slot. Like, that's great. But the next shift, he misses. Like he passes to a teammate who's already covered. So it's very inconsistent, and it's not based on reach. Like he's just doing things because he can do things with his skating. But there's that offensive upside to an extent there too.
Can we think of anyone who we could all agree on to place above him?
But yeah, Zayne Parekh and I think Trevor Connelly.
I think he has some really good tools and some good moments, but like the amount of times I watched 3 games last night and he just kept running pucks right into the sticks.
So many players like in this draft where it's all tools and they lack the hockey sense to back them up. And I'm primed to like them because I don't care about decision making as much. But in this case, like it's pretty concerning because he's a volume scorer, a bit like you said. Like he's going to try plays until one works. But he has those moments where he can manipulate defenders and he opens stuff for teammates. But it's 1 in 10. So, but again, he has the tools and he has those flashes. So you combine them. I think he's a high-end player and probably a top 15 guy. But he's incredibly frustrating, and he has to be coachable to get rid of those habits.
But so I mentioned Iginla because his growth over the years has been so crazy, and this is a take from David, but like he plays above his skill level a lot of the time, which means he tries a lot of things and maybe 1 out of 5 works, but when it does, it's crazy. So I guess he's kind of tough like to evaluate really, but there's lots of pro elements like proactive contact and lots of deceptive playmaking and all that type of things. So it's this range is kind of confusing. It's hard.
Yeah, we just have to bet that the flashes are going to become consistent.
You have to look at like upward like projection and like how he's developed, and will that just keep going up linearly, or what's the case there, right? And that's the hard part.
Lauren, Parekh.
All right. So Parekh is a super high upside, dynamic defender, activations, manipulating, dynamic handling. The rush defense, I've personally seen some growth this year. I don't think it was as big of an issue as it was last season. I know other viewings have been hit or miss for other people. The biggest issue, again, like David has mentioned, is the decision making, the play selection. He can force plays, passes that don't reach their intended targets because he just hasn't taken the time to properly scan. The play in the defensive zone is also kind of hit or miss for a player who is always constantly thinking offense. Doesn't always scan in his own end, but the upside is a lot higher than a player like Dickinson. I just think like the defensive play needs a lot more refining, and like Dickinson's probably a slightly safer projection, which is why he is ahead on my ranking. But if Parekh can hit, like the upside is tremendous with this kind of player.
In a way, they're kind of like 2 different types of upside. You have tools and potential to do things, and you have guy who does everything, and you need him to kind of tone it down a little bit and make it into a more NHL package. And I feel that the debate between Parekh and Dickinson will probably be returning throughout the year. I would imagine that the gap will shrink between them. So are we cool with Silayev and then Parekh, or Parekh and then Silayev?
Yeah, it's funny with the two of them specifically. So Parekh is one of the best defenders in the class, in the model, depending exactly how you do it. And then Silayev kind of breaks things, because if you allow the model to see draft year data, it's going to tell you that the guy who's like second in class scoring, but a defenseman, is it's going to want to pick him really, really high. I'm somewhat skeptical of that, because pro production is really, really noisy in these models relative to junior production. And obviously he was not that guy in his draft -1 year. So I would fade that a little bit, although I get the argument the other way. And then, yeah, Parekh gets as high as top 5 in the class.
Okay, so let's appease Dylan and have Parekh over Silayev for now. And we can always go back to it and debate our hearts out.
Do we agree with Connelly after, or is that too early for him?
I personally would have Tij Iginla over. I think Connelly, I echo pretty much everything that Daniel said. And this is again going to be a debate about your perspective and how you want to weigh things. I think Iginla has much better details. I don't think the skill is as high, but I think the combination of details, willingness to try things, and the fact that he's much better at putting the finishing touches on a play than Connelly is, gives him more long-term upside.
You've seen him for a while.
Yeah, I mean, the evolution of Tij Iginla has been very interesting. So a few years ago, he's more of a details guy. You don't really see him try to deke people too much. He's give, go, relocate, win body positioning. He does some reactionary handling as a way to protect the puck and get to the net. And then this year, now that he's free from the fourth line and on a new team, you're seeing him really expand his game, trying to handle the puck more, be super flashy and create plays out of nothing. As Daniel said, it doesn't work 4 out of 5 times. But the one that it does shows a player who is really trying to expand his game and increase his upside, add new ways to create. And so I think it's a little rough around the edges, but you can say that for everyone in this draft class other than Celebrini, really. So a potential second line scorer with defensive upside and some physicality. And I'm also cool with Connelly at 15, understanding that the upside there is immense and we're just going to ignore some other stuff. So whatever.
I don't even know if it's immense though. He's good, but I don't think he's crazy good.
Is he a Lambert-esque player in the sense that he's a lot of tools, but you're not really sure that he's going to be able to be the guy who's getting a ton of points?
Yeah, here's how I see him is that, he gets fed obviously all of the minutes right now, quite obviously, and he defers to his teammates a lot. Like he looks for opportunities to set them up. When I saw him live a couple times there, he was setting up his teammates and they weren't ready for it. They weren't able to handle it, but he didn't look like he was getting all that frustrated, and he kept going back to them, which was a bit of a surprise for me. I thought that he'd try to do it a little one-man show sort of thing. He's good, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to get those same opportunities at the NHL level, right? So he's probably more suited for a middle six, second power play sort of thing. So we'll see if he can still be as dominating at times in a different role as he moves up. And then, of course, how's that moving up going to look, right? Is he going to be welcomed into different situations, into different organizations? Is he going to get that leeway that he's getting right now at the USHL level? So there's just so many things that go into assessing that prospect, not only just on the ice, but as the whole encompassing thing there, that I think it's fair that if we want to look at his ceiling as a little bit lower than potentially it could look in his flashes. Yeah.
I agree. I also see that there's another scenario for him that he tones down the hope passes and he becomes learns to use his teammates even more, and the skating is the tools are not just high end, they're close to elite. I feel like he can make some plays that are not accessible to almost anyone else in this draft. I saw him attack down the wing and stop abruptly and cut to the net and roof the puck above the goalie. This is amazing. These are amazing plays.
Okay, so 15 Trevor Connelly for now. Dun dun dun. So at 16, so we finished the top 15. At 16,
Greentree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, he's got to be in there. Yeah.
Handling skills, obviously the pace of the skating is a problem, but the ability to use his teammates, the hockey sense, working well in space, the dangling abilities, that is kind of incredible for a player who can't skate that well. And I know I'm not the only person who likes him here.
Yes, this is a great spot for him. He's kind of an exception to this draft. He stands out because he's able to find the right play at the right time consistently. And that's kind of where his value comes from. You put him in a mid-6 role on the wing, he's going to create a lot of offense for you, and he's going to come back into the other side of the rink and turn defense into offense. So yeah. Liam Greentree it is. I hear no objection. So
I have 2 names after that. Zeev Buium, I think I got that right, and Igor Chernyshov. Yeah.
Lassie has Chernyshov 15 to 20, and he's the next best player available on his board. And Chase also has him quite high.
I like Chernyshov. He's smart. Like, he's already completing plays the KHL level, like playing like 8 minutes a game, creating chances. Like, really fun.
I do like Chernyshov. I think that he hasn't popped off as much as he could have this year. He did miss a lot of time in the offseason. He had shoulder surgery, so he missed any like real on ice training. He was only able to kind of skate around non-contact. And then instead of trying to make the KHL team from the get-go, he had to start preseason in the MHL, played like 2 games there, and wasn't really a lot to go off of going into the season. But his draft year was great. There's a lot of promising signs there. And then early season MHL games were kind of weaker. He was playing against poor teams and he wasn't producing early on, which was kind of concerning from the start. But he started to pick it up a bit more. He's showing more finishing skills. His goal scoring still hasn't kind of picked up the way it should have, just based on last year and based on the skills that he has to actually get chances and finish them off. He just got unlucky this year. He didn't get a lot of clean chances put away. But he's very physical. You see that in the KHL especially, where he's leaning into guys, connecting passes through transitions, just bringing pressure to him, and then bouncing off hits, sending passes to the middle. He's typically able to kind of fit into his role at the KHL level, which you don't always see with young players. He's plays. He's like knows where to be in most times. The offensive game isn't really there in the KHL yet. He's still pretty inexperienced, so it'll come with due time, I'm sure. But right now he's just looking more like a kind of an off puck guy that you have out there to get the puck, move it, and then if he can chip in with a shot or just get down low, move the puck to the middle, anything like that. So the floor is there. I'm not super sold on the upside yet. I think with more time this year, more KHL experience, I'm sure he'll start to look better just based on the tools he has and how smart he is. But right now, I think he's closer to 20 for me.
I really like his defense. Like he plays the positioning game really well in the KHL. I didn't expect that from him based on my last year viewing. So like it's good that he's already playing well at the pro level. I think that's about his range. We could have him there or a bit later. There are some other names, but at the same time, like we can talk about Misa, Zeev Buium that are like a lot, and I think Cole Hutson played a lot better in his recent games too. That may be a bit early for him, but not too much.
So, are we okay with Chernyshov?
Yeah, I would like to have Chernyshov there. Honestly, I think that's about his spot.
I just have Artamonov ahead of him. Artamonov, I've loved him all year. Last year, in the MHL, he was very kind of skill heavy, kind of trying to dangle through guys. I mean, he was doing it. He has very good hands. But he moved up into the KHL like halfway through preseason, and he wasn't really looking like he was going to do much, at least at 5-on-5. Didn't even look like he would really make the team. But then him and Silayev both made it, and they put him on the first line with Kovalenko, and he immediately popped off. He's producing well, but even just outside of the production, you see players like him, young players, move up to the KHL, and they'll put him with top guys. Like last year, Danil But would play a lot with Lokomotiv's top guys, and he'd just kind of be out there with them. He's, kind of lingering, plays fall to him and stuff like that. But with Artamonov, you're seeing someone actually who's involved through transitions. He's making plays off puck. His off-puck timing is awesome. Like there's a lot of players who, like people will say like that he like gets open, which I feel like is for like a shooter is like a thing that should just be like a thing in their game that it shouldn't really be like a positive thing. A lot of times he'll just be moving into space and it's like, okay, yeah. But his timing to get into those spaces, moving out of the crease and then getting a shooting opportunity, he does it 2 or 3 times a game where he gets open for a chance like that. And he's doing it at the KHL level. He's playing top line minutes. He's looking like a driver. He's a very smart player. He has his moments where he plays too fast. And that, again, like Silayev, is something that is a system thing where they want to play fast. They want to move the puck quickly, give and go. But he's spotting passes at a really high level, even if the plays aren't connecting. I have him higher than 19th, obviously, but I think there's a lot of upside with this player, even if maybe the offense takes a bit longer. He's not the best skater. He has good pace, but the skating is kind of his major, like the one major thing that kind of holds him back from being a tier above. But the motor, the playmaking, the timing, everything, there's a really, really interesting player here.
Lauren, why don't you tell us about Luke Misa?
Okay, sure. I love him, first of all. I've seen him, I think, 6 or 7 times, and I'm going to see them later again this afternoon. But this is like one of the best on the rush, in transition, off puck plays, stick checks, lifting sticks, creating turnovers, very defensively aware, responsible. He's on the smaller side, and he's older in this draft class as a late 2005 birthday. He leads the OHL in draft eligible scoring this season. Obviously, we have to take that late birthday into account, but just the ability to use his teammates, work give and goes, create offense, use the middle. I've just been impressed with almost every viewing that I've had of him. And even on the viewings where he hasn't stood out as much on the score sheet, he's still impacting the puck, creating plays, trying to produce offense for his teams. Just as one of those players I haven't really had a bad viewing of yet this season.
He's a great example of a player who you project to just be an insane speedster at the NHL, even though mechanically he's not the most beautiful. Like, he just generates so much power through his crossovers, through his strides. He's always in motion. He's the type of player who, if there's a speed differential, he's going to create it. You know, he's the type of player who can really push back defenses, turn the corner on them, and I think he's going to continue doing that in the NHL.
Is this his range?
I put him at 20th for now, and at 18 we have Zeev Buium. David, your time.
Yeah, I think he has improved since last year, and he's one of those toolsy defensemen too. But like, the issue with him is that he doesn't have the mobility of other defensemen in this draft, like Dickinson or Levshunov. Like, his stride has more weaknesses in it, and he can't follow the play as well as those other players. But he has managed the puck well, and he's making plays too. So that's a pretty big difference from these other players. So he and his defensive game is improving too. He's that great engager. We can get on opponents on the boards and neutralize them and separate them from the puck. And he's very attentive defensively. He's scanning. So I think that facet of his game is really improving. He's managing the puck well, and he's making plays at the offensive line too, like faking defenders and getting the puck to teammates. He distributes the puck well too. He has a lot of qualities. It's just the skating. Is his mobility going to prevent him from getting to a top 4 role? Maybe, but I would bet on the rest of his skill set. So I think he has played very well.
I agree. And I think he's the second youngest player in college hockey behind Celebrini. And like, he is, like you said, highly engaged, right? Like, he's not afraid to jump up and lay the body in the neutral zone and close in and jump into the play and be that support third option, fourth option. I've been impressed in the couple of views I've had of him too.
Okay, so there's our top 20. At 21, I think David mentioned Cole Hutson. I would also like to bring in Becket Sennecke, who went from 5'10" in his OHL at the OHL draft to 6'3". He's an awkward, dangly guy who creates a lot of offense in weird and unpredictable ways, but he's also got a physical side, protecting pucks, getting pucks off the board, and so on. It's a really rough watch right now, but you can see the pathway for him to become a top 9, do-it-all forward.
Also happens to be the only giant in this draft class that David doesn't like for some reason.
I just haven't seen a lot from him.
He's 6'3", so by David's
6'3",
standards,
okay.
yeah.
All right. Yeah.
If for David's standards, if you're 5'11", you're too short to play in the NHL. But if you're 6'1",
That's not it.
You're a tower of power.
Your argument was that he used to be short. That's why he's.
Yeah, I just haven't seen a lot from him. Like, I think I've just been catching bad games. Like, I see the puck protection, the ability to get pucks off the boards and playmaking, but he's a bit awkward, and that's normal. Like, he grew so much in the summer, but I just don't see it with him yet. But I trust you guys. So if you want him there, I think it could be a perfect spot. But there's also Cole Hutson and Aron Kiviharju that I think should be back to back, maybe in this spot.
I also think
about them.
Yakimchuk, and I like Emil Hemming too. There's a couple
ahead
more
of those
for the zone. Right in that zone, anyways. Yeah, I think all around. Let's see. Right. I got Kiviharju and Hemming back to back, and then Yakimchuk. Yeah.
Lassie has Kiviharju at 17-22, so we'll put Kiviharju down now as he continues this free fall.
Yeah, it's too bad, honestly, because the issue with him is not only that his own development, but it's the development of other similar defensemen to him. Yeah. Like we've seen Brandstrom and Soderstrom and the other ones. There are many examples that they escape me right now. There's someone else in Dallas who's been playing better this year. Yeah,
Niels Lundqvist.
Yeah, so it's just that this type of defenseman, they haven't worked that well in the NHL in the past years. So we'd have to take into account that when projecting him. Like, his puck moving ability is really great. It's just his skating is also high end in some respects, but it's a weakness in other respects in terms of agility. So is he going to be able to play the same type of game at the NHL level? I think his breakouts are going to translate, but just defending, boxing out players, and puck management, like, he needs a lot of touches to be effective. But we'll see. He's another player that we're going to monitor and review during the year.
Okay, Kiviharju at 21, Sennecke at 22. And then I think for the last 10 spots, probably just going to have to say, can we all get behind this player being here, or take the majority or so on? Because this is a very close tier that goes all the way down to the end of the second, basically, at this stage of the season. What about Andrew Basha here?
Cole Hutson.
Okay. Oh yeah, Cole Hutson. This is a good spot for him.
Joey.
I mean, I really like him. Similar to you, David, I've seen more of him lately than I watched a little bit of him at the Fall Classic, and obviously it was really underwhelming. But it's funny, you see a lot of the same stuff that Lane does, probably on a toned down level a little bit, but just so twitchy, separation of his upper body and his feet, baits guys one way and then explodes out the other way. Kind of similar to Lane in like his U18 year. There's not going to be much in the way of rush defense or kind of in zone, but I think in terms of his transition ability, he goes from 0 to 60 relatively quickly. I think he's gotten better at kind of keeping it simple, finding a good outlet. And there's the shades of kind of Lane's point manipulation that a lot of the other NTP defensemen don't have. So in terms of like upside, there are safer bets looking at that U18 program, but like his flashes are so much more exciting than anybody else.
Another player that frustrates greatly, though, right? Like, when he's not on his game, he is nothing but a liability, right? Like, he's another player who I was really disappointed with at the Fall Classic. He did basically nothing. He was outplayed by what's that kid's name? The 25 eligible one that I liked.
Hensler.
Yeah, thank you. And EJ Emery outplayed him. Like, hell, I probably would have taken Skahan over him after watching that event. But yes, the upside with the playmaking, the jump rushing, he's got the fun stuff for sure. But the rest of the game, big question.
Skahan and Emery are good, but they're boring.
Emery's got a little more to him, but yeah, Skahan's definitely he's going to be your meat and potatoes. But like I was saying in the Slack, like, oh my god, this guy's never missed a leg day in his life. Like, it was it was as wide as my body each leg. Like, it just massive legs on him. He's going to be able to hit guys like a truck at the next level too.
I think Cole Hutson, that is actually a better defender than his brother was at the same age. I mean, maybe even now. He has more of a physical side to his game. The defensive footwork is much better. He suffers from the same issues, like the lack of explosiveness, the lack of speed. He can be pushed off pucks, but he's a lot more proactive defensively than Lane was. And so I think, I'm not saying he's going to be a stalwart defensively, but you can live with a little bit less of the dynamic offensive side because he brings a little bit more defensively, a little bit more ability to retrieve pucks and then bring them out to his teammate.
But it's like their playing styles. It's like, give me Lane's higher end upside offensively, because you're not going to rely on Cole Hutson's defensive game, right? Like, that's not going to be his bread and butter. Yeah. But you're right. It might be passable more, without that elite offensive side.
Had a really
There's still some of
recently.
the similar sloppiness in pivots and things like that, I think.
Yeah, coming out of him. Yeah.
And his breakouts are nightmare fuel, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah.
So
I like Basha though too, Mitch.
Okay.
I do too.
Right? He's a speedster. He looks good with Lindstrom. Like, that's a fun little combo they got going on there in Medicine Hat. He's a fun player. I think he's a first rounder. I think he should be on that board here.
So much pace in his game. Like, I've had like hot and cold viewings, but the hot viewings have been crazy. Like, he's just sprinting up the ice nonstop.
Yeah, the skating is really high on. So sometimes it's all pace though. That's the issue with him. Like, I'm not sure what else he is right now, but he uses his teammates. He's not just rushing the pucks. He has those give and goes with Lindstrom, but it definitely helps that he's playing with that guy.
I think it's a good spot for him right now.
Really good development curve too. I mean, he was a big scorer last year in the WHL, but you're seeing a lot more nuance, a lot more skill to his game this year. He's been on a very impressive upward development curve over the last few seasons, and he's continued it into this year.
I like EJ Emery in this spot too.
Me too.
I like Emery too. Yeah,
he's all defense right now, but he has some occasional flashes of offense, and the size and mobility and the desire to engage on opponents. Like, he has that formula too. I see he
looks like he's just going to be one of these like quiet guys who can be on a second pair and just chew up minutes and make smart decisions, but not really stand out too much.
I like him because like he can make in motion plays on the breakout. He can make the first play through a forechecker, but he's also like a very good like supporting offensive player, where he'll step into the zone and use space before shooting. He'll move the puck at the right times. You're not expecting him to be a big point producer, but he's the type of guy who can get the puck into the offensive zone and keep it there.
Who's next?
Got some names.
Because I've got goalies too. Turn it to Greg.
This is a good group for OHL goalies.
Like, the numbers that they're putting up are unparalleled. Like, we have not seen this in at least 5 or 6 seasons. And the saves, the level of difficulty, the mechanics, the lateral movement, glove, hand, blocker side, neither of these guys, between Carter George and Marks and Leaders, neither of them appear to have any tangible weaknesses. And that is based on my very limited knowledge of scouting goaltenders, because I have no idea how to do it. But I've just been so impressed by both of them this season. So if they end up on the board, then they're probably end of the first round, maybe early second guys, but felt like they had done enough in October to warrant at least a mention at this meeting.
Linders definitely deserves to be on the board.
Last night was the first maybe so-so viewing I've had, because Barrie couldn't stop scoring, but they're not a good defensive team, and they are at the top of the league right now. So he's basically winning games he's stealing games for them.
All right, let's put Linders down. That's a ringing endorsement.
What about Terik Parascak and Sacha Boisvert?
Okay, tell us about both of them.
So brace yourself. Parascak is on pace for 85 goals this season and 142 points. He's had like a historic start to a rookie WHL season, mainly built on like a really nuanced supporting game. He can switch off of battle support right into pass support, pops into high danger areas and finishes. None of his tools are really super high end, but he flashes some advanced playmaking ideas like slips and that type of thing. Skating is his biggest weakness. He doesn't have any dynamic. He's not dynamic at all. Like he can't really like punch to the inside, which means a lot of outside plays, but he's a ridiculous penalty killer, gets a stick in lanes. He has like 3 or 4 shorthanded goals this season on top of it all. connecting really well on like the Cougars secondary scoring, and he's outscoring guys like Height and Zemer point per game wise too. Sacha Boisvert, he's really skilled. Like he's got a wicked catch and release shot. Some really good playmaking ideas. I know he's a bit controversial among the group. Some people don't like him, but I just liked a supporting game and everything about him. I watched all his games this week. I think he's a first round pick. He requires some imagination though. You're gonna have to like project out what he's gonna be, and if that skating improves. He is a second year, but it's really unrefined. So two guys I think should be probably at the end of the board.
Boisvert's skating is so limiting. It's going to be so prohibitive for him, I think, that he won't be able to do the things that he can do at the USHL, which aren't even that dominant at that level right now. For me, he looks more like a third rounder, but I've said my piece.
I think he's like
before too.
I think he's like a lot better than basically the whole US team except for Eiserman. I think he outshone them when he played against them. He's just excellent, creating advantages constantly. So I don't know. He's going to be, I think he's going to be controversial this year for us trying to figure out where he should go, but I quite like him right now.
Skill wise, that's fair that he is probably the second best player on, compared to those American forwards too. As we said, we don't really like any other development program forwards up in this zone. Projectability wise, maybe Humphreys has a better shot at being a player just with his two-way mind, and he has some decent hands at times too. But yeah, I've said his name a couple times. Hemming though, I think that he should definitely be in this zone. At the U20 level, he is dominant. Like he's scoring a goal and a half a game, over 2 points a game. And on that TPS squad that doesn't even have another point per game player, he is by far their best player when he's playing at the junior level. And at the Liga, he's a slightly plus rated skater. I think his mind is really great. He's not elite skills, but he's still able to play at that level and play smartly. His timing can get a little off on some plays. You can see him just getting pinched off a bit with the time and space at that level, but that's just an adjustment as a young player. So I think that kid he's got the smarts and he's got the ability and the skating that puts him at a level that he's definitely a first round contender, and the production kind of backs that up too.
Yeah, I have it, Maxim Massé too in this range. Mm-hmm. What he does best is move away from the puck, find pockets of space, and get a shot off. But he has some playmaking spots in the offensive zone too, and his tools are NHL projectable. More of a third line than top six guy, more of a supportive forward. But in this range, if you want NHL certainty, you're probably picking Massé.
So what about Massé versus Sacha Boisvert?
I'd pick Massé. But it's close. I respect the skill. There are some Matthew Wood elements there. The upside is pretty high.
I like Terik more than both of them at this stage. I think he plays a more assertive game than Massé does, and the upside, or the skating at least, is better than Boisvert's. So should we put Terik down at 28, and then Massé, Boisvert?
Yes, and we should put down Hemming too, because I think that Lassie really likes him.
Yeah, he's above Terik and Maxim.
Yeah,
and then we have two more spots. I think they should probably go to Tanner Howe and Henry Muse.
Howe has a bunch of cool physical habits, just driving his shoulder up into the chest of defenders and then stick lifting them and stealing the puck and centering it. He's pretty basic, but you have to respect the production and what he's been able to do on pretty limited roster.
He's Brendan Gallagher-esque for sure. Just watching him tank through guys and sprint to the net is pretty incredible.
Penalty killing, watch the game. He was it was 8 minutes of penalty killing in the first period. Just tanking, hit shots and doing anything.
Okay, and then Henry Muse. Lauren, do you want to tell us about Henry Muse?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting player. He could probably drop on the next board if he's not there's production issues. But He's got skill, the skating ability. Again, with Dickinson and Parekh, the decision making is a bit of an issue with this player. Rush defense is an issue. The ability to create offense, more activations this season. He was probably a top 15 pick heading into the season. I don't know if he's performed at that level right now, but probably worth including at this point, because I don't think he's done anything at this point to suggest dropping him out of the top 32 entirely. And if we're listing honorable mentions, I think we're going to end up having Cole Bodwin on our next board. But I'm the only one who's watched him, and I need some more viewings on him. But I was really impressed with what I saw last night. Like, I think he's on par with Greentree. So we'll get to him next time, I guess.
Yeah, it's just the first board, so
yeah,
plenty of time for changes.
I can't wait to look back on this and be like, wow, we are so stupid for ranking these players in October. Why do we do this to ourselves?
I also think if we have EJ Emery at 25, Skahan should be an honorable mention.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so who's Skahan kicking off? We have Tanner Howe, Henry Muse, Boisvert, Massé.
I'm not saying he necessarily has to be on the end of the board. I'm just saying I think an honorable mention is fine, because I do think they're very close, and I think Skahan does a lot of things that Emery doesn't offensively.
I agree. Like, he has some flashes.
He does have some amazing moments, like step in, fake shot, cross slot bullet.
Yep.
Just blows you away when he does it out of nowhere. Yeah.
I even saw some Cale Makar footwork, and I was like, wait, what?
But he doesn't have the defensive game or like the solid projection like EJ Emery.
He's more of a smasher out there. His defensive style is not very nuanced, we would say.
Does it make sense to have Yakimchuk just like not acknowledged at all? We should
age him too. Yeah. Because again, we talked about it. He's going to develop into like this shutdown defender.
Like, I think when you look at him, like the hope that like a team would have is like, oh, like this guy can be kind of like a Parenko for us, but like there's a lot of refinement that needs to go on for him to get to that stage. I watched a game last night where he took the puck right off the blue line, walked it in and almost tucked it in the net, and then he hammered a one-time shot at the very end of the game to win it all, and like just destroyed a couple guys. Like, he's definitely a lizard brain player, but for good and bad reasons. So I don't know, like, he's a hard one to kind of evaluate, but like we have a lot of big kind of like, hockey says not so high players. So I don't know how we go about that properly.
He belongs there. Like, he's a shutdown defenseman the making that chooses to play a lot of offense right now, but that won't be his role at the NHL level. I don't think so. And Chase, do you have any final words on the board? Anything you see that doesn't really make sense?
I think it generally makes a fair bit of sense. You guys it's like tough when it's early, because a lot of the times the numbers regress towards the rankings, not the other way around. So like, if you ran the model last year, like 2 months into the season, would have like Cristal third or whatever, and by the end of the year, still like Cristal quite a bit, but it pulled towards where everybody was ranking him in that general direction at the very least. I like that Howe made the board. He's a huge standout in the model as well. And then just one general thing, Cam brought it up, and I've said this in the past too, but something I noticed, the idea that somebody has like way outscored their teammates. I put that in the model as a variable to account for these guys. I thought, okay, it will really help if a guy plays on an awful team. He's like the one guy putting up 100 points. Nobody else has 60 points or whatever it is. And the model will actually end up punishing guys like that, not giving them a boost. So it'll actually treat the highly productive player on a team with other highly productive players better, not worse, which I found kind of odd at first. But then if you think about with guys like Oliver Moore, like his production gets really, really hurt because he has good teammates, like, and whatnot, I think is the logic behind that. But that was just an interesting thing that I noticed that's kind of counterintuitive that, I don't know, I thought you guys might find interesting.
So like there's a lot of guys who the offense runs solely through them, and so they score in ways that they won't be able to score at the next level, which I mean, there is a name that we mentioned earlier that kind of fits that bill, and Cristal a little bit, where everything goes through him. in a way that it won't at the next level. And so that's a very interesting point.
Yeah, I think
thank you.
Dragon was punished in my model relative to other models last year too for that same reason.
And we mentioned this with Trevor Connelly too, like it fits in a way.
I think that takes care of everything. Thank you all for joining and for participating. It was great. We got a nice 32 that we'll look back on and cringe. So have fun. Enjoy the rest of your day.